Hello YouTube, welcome to another one of my thought videos today. Today this one's gonna be pretty interesting since what I'm gonna cover here is a pretty obscure novel. So basically, for the ones who remember, y'all, if y'all ever remember the book The Giver, if you I don't remember who it was, but it was a book called The Giver. I don't know who the author was, but it was basically in this society where it's kind of the it's a society where everything is perfect. It's a utopia where everything is controlled, everyone's personal aspects, lives absolutely are controlled in every single way they do. All right. One example of this is uh actually I haven't read this book in a while, but I definitely remember the one key aspect of it. But basically, for the ones who remember at least a little bit of The Giver, so basically, y'all, The Giver is where everything's perfect, and where if someone tried to be different, or let's say the elders of the population, called they're usually called to this one place in a building in the town, and then they were quote unquote released, which is basically, for the ones who don't know, release practically means it's kind of like what do you call it? It's kind of like being given the death sentence without a conviction. All right. So basically, think that let's say there's like a deviant in the deviant, and let's say the giver. Like let's say someone thought just a little bit differently. Well, they'd be put into this room. They'd be given injected with a needle, and then boom, they're released. Meaning uh it's practically the death of people who think differently, people who do not want to conform, basically. So basically, just to kind of make this simple, The Giver book, for the ones who don't remember, this is like a really obscure middle school novel. It basically shows the consequences of a conformist society where everyone agrees with the same viewpoints, everyone agrees with all this or all that. And that's a really big problem that I'm going to draw the contrast here and compare it to, because we're also going to talk about the polarization of society. So basically, polarization of society. Everybody believes the same viewpoints on a morally ambiguous issue. Like, let's say there's a video on Inside Edition where one of the news anchors are covering, let's say, a form of abuse, like this person or that person was abused, let's say that uh, and let's say that this video eventually gets released today. The really big problem with this, y'all, is that number one, many news outlets tend to over sensationalize a lot of things, so it could be misunderstanding. But the really big problem with here is that with the polarization of society, you're gonna expect a lot of really strong reactions, or especially if whatever news anchor, whatever news outlet was doing, it was pretty vague. You're gonna expect very strong reactions from society, especially if it's posted on something like YouTube. It's gonna be very strong, very strong reactions. And what I think the really big problem with this, even though it's absolutely meant in good faith, and I must make this clear, y'all. Each and every single case of abuse and how it will be covered on the news or on how it will be covered on the internet will be different. All right, my judgment right here will not apply universally, but it will apply to some. But right now, let's say they're covering on anything for that matter. Like let's say that say given X random news outlet or random YouTuber, let's say they're covering uh this case of abuse for that matter. Let's say they're covering, heck, instead of abuse, let's give it anything else that could give society a really strong reaction. Like let's say there's this one kid out there who let's say there's one kid out there who committed this crime or that crime. Obviously, y'all chat will be expecting a lot of really strong reactions. But where I'm going to draw the line here is on morally ambiguous issues. Alright, let me go ahead and, especially when it comes to certain cases of abuse where a lot of things can be unclear, what I really think about this is that abuse, as I said again in my last video, it can vary across all sectors. It can vary across relationships, friendships, and a lot of places. The really big problem here, I'm gonna pull out my phone notes real quick. The really big problem with this is that comparing this with The Giver, there are consequences to conforming to polarized viewpoints. All right, just like in the book The Giver, you have to conform to, everybody has to conform to this or that, or else you'd be subjected to punishment. The really big problem with society and the court of public opinion is polarization. I'm gonna go ahead and read it right here. The big problem with polarized when it comes to, let's say, morally ambiguous issues, all right, let's say punitive punishment plus forgiveness in the case of abuse. The really big problem with this is that when it comes to very strong reactions from the court of public opinion, from society, the big problem here is that number one, polarization of viewpoints does not lead to do not lead to solutions. Number two, echo chambers where viewpoints are constantly being reinforced, that does not lead to solutions either. Let's say a strongholds of this viewpoint or that viewpoint channel does not lead to solutions either. All right, this is simply a place where everyone's viewpoints are reinforced without nuance, and the really big problem with this, y'all, is that, let me go ahead and read this from my notes. I think this one makes it a little bit better. Just as the movie, just as the book The Giver expects everyone to conform to this one way, polarized societal reactions to issues fall into a pattern of extreme reactions that lead to no solutions. Okay, I'm getting it back there again. There we go. The really big problem with echo chambers in the on the internet, and the really big problem with what do you call this, polarized opinions, is that they don't lead to solutions. The problem is when one side thinks that they're higher than the other, this isn't gonna lead to solutions. This is practically like call out culture, where everyone calls out this, trying to one up each other, the critics and trolls trying to make fun of a lot of the situation. It's a really big problem. It won't lead to solutions. Echo chambers do not lead to solutions. And the really big problem with this is that, number one, y'all, this is an avoidance of painful realities. Yes, eventually, when it comes to solving solutions, we have to face the other side. We can't just be entrenched in our own viewpoints. We can't just be in a stronghold channel where it supports this viewpoint or that viewpoint. We have to meet with people of the other side. We have to meet them calmly and cordially, for that matter. Cordially. We have to meet them in a respectful manner. Because if we're constantly staying in our own viewpoints, it's not gonna lead to solutions. We're avoiding painful realities by staying in echo chambers. And that's a really big problem with that. When we try to solve morally ambiguous cases, especially when it comes to punitive punishment plus forgiveness, or let's say trying to cover on a case of abuse for that matter, problem is abusers themselves distort the perception of reality, and trolls also distort the perception of reality. Drama distorts the perception of reality, making the issue seem like it's this way or it's that way. No, the problem is these issues go always, not ALWAYS, ALLWAYS. And that's the problem with that. And when we add echo chambers, they don't lead to anything. It doesn't lead to think of it like this. Let me go ahead and put it right here. That's why I take neutral stances on a lot of things and taking balanced views, accepting that this side has this side and this side has these experiences too. Because ultimately, at the cost of polarization, y'all, society, at the cost of their own polarized opinions and staying in their own echo chambers, we miss out on solutions for nuance. We miss out on a lot of solutions to complex problems too, especially when it comes to climate change, where people think that this side is better or that side is better. It won't lead to solutions. All right, I don't like to oversimplify a lot of things, but if we can't face with the other side, we're going to avoid a lot of painful realities. Most importantly, by echo chambers, we're gonna avoid the truth. We're gonna avoid the truth of having to face off each and one another and having to work together to find solutions. Because no matter how much we hate each other, we as humanity have to work together when it comes to problems. We can't just be staying in our own places. We can't be staying in our own lanes. When it comes to solving issues, this is like teamwork, for that matter. If all sides aren't willing to work with each other, then we're not gonna find solutions. All right. When it comes to my own views, I also take nuance over polarization, because echo chambers, they don't they only lead to reinforcement of views, especially when it comes to it. Especially, I understand for people of either sides too, especially victims of abuse, and most importantly for this one too, from victims of abuse to victims of abuse, but other people who have seen rehabilitation in people who have done abuse. And that's a really big problem with society and polarization, is that it does not accept the other side. It's always their points are always being reinforced, but there's no nuance. That's why a lot of people are afraid to speak out for their own viewpoints, whether it's controversial or whether it's lacking this or that. We make people afraid by strong reactions. We as a society make people afraid by echo chambers because there's always going to be strong reactions. The problem with strong reactions is that it never leads to solutions. I understand that a lot of people who have uh, who have seen rehabilitation or who have seen or have been victims themselves of this or that, if we stay entrenched in our own views, it won't ever lead to solutions. And the really big problem with this is we avoid painful realities and ultimately we avoid the truth. As a society, when it comes to polarization, especially when it comes to a lot of what do you call this? A lot of the drama channels out there on YouTube, especially on the broader internet, especially one of those small actually when it comes to drama channels, it really depends, as I said again. But I'm saying is those subsets of drama channels. Alright, when it comes to the drama channels of people throwing mudslinging at each other, throwing that he did this or they did that or that neutrality. Staying neutral in this situation is clowned upon. Staying neutral or not taking a side is mm, you're like a defender of this person or that person. And the really big problem with this is that this lacks nuance. By painting someone as a straightforward, by painting someone as this person or that person, and not acknowledging that they're also human too. They've also had human experiences of their own too. By us lacking, that we, by society lacking humanity in each other when it comes to arguments, that's also another reason we're never gonna come to solutions too. Because another thing is we're avoiding reality and we're staying comfortable in our own places, and that doesn't lead to solutions. That doesn't lead to anything. Looking at it again, we're sacrificing potential dialogue. We're stifling discourse. We're stifling discourse from both sides in sacrifice for a polarized viewpoint where everyone stays comfortable in their own lane. Is that Listen, chat, especially for the people that are entrenched in their own viewpoints now, is that really fair? Are we really gonna sacrifice even for people of both sides too? Are you really gonna sacrifice um the potential dialogue, potential are you really gonna sacrifice that and even a potential solution? Are we going to sacrifice that for polarization? That's a really big question right here that I'm going to say before I end this video. When we engage in polarized viewpoints, when we reinforce already negative stereotypes about a lot of things, are we sacrificing potential dialogue and simply reinforcing our own views? Or is this going to lead into something that's better, no matter the type of criticism that it gets? Alright, and of course, this channel definitely stands out on a lot of nuance, so I'm going to make sure that extremists of both sides do not take the narrative here. Alright, you guys can speak obviously, but obviously I cannot let one side dominate over the other and when it comes to a lot of complex issues, alright? Obviously when it comes to it, are we when it comes to saying our own viewpoints, it really says that question of reality and the polarization of society. Are we sacrificing potential dialogue and nuanced engagement in return for echo chambers uh and strong reactions? That's a question that I'm trying to articulate here. That's a question I'm asking you guys too.